Warning, the following video contains strong opinions about video games and may not be suitable for some audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
The Game Awards are just around the corner. There's a lot of amazing games up for Game of the Year. There's one out of this entire lot that I think is going to win. There's one out of this entire lot that I think deserves to win. And we're going to be breaking those down by the numbers, by the industry impact, by the amount of copies sold, and the studios behind it. So we're going to jump into it right now. So these are the nominees for Game of the Year on the Game Awards. Astrobot, Balatro, Black Myth Wukong, Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree DLC, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and Metaphor Refantazio. These are all massive games, great games in their own right? Metacritic score, 94 for Astrobot, 90 for Balatro, Black Myth Wukong with the lowest score of an 81, Erdtree at 94, Rebirth 92, Metaphor 94. All very well-received games. I'm going to go into the negatives of all these games first. The negatives first and then the positives. We're going to get the bad stuff out of the way.
Hey, let me get a selfie. Come on. Okay. See?
So first off with Astrobot. Sony's had this issue for as long as the PS5 has existed, that there has not been, I know there's games, before the Sony fans go after me in the comments, I own a PS5. I play the PS5. I don't like the controller, but it doesn't matter. Astrobot is a fantastic platformer, very cutesy game, very fun game. But the problem with Sony is that they have this issue of not putting out games and not putting out big games to sell consoles. They have their exclusive, sure, but they really haven't had anything big in a while. Astrobot was that big thing for them. They were also going through a lot of bad press at the time of, oh, we don't have any IPs.
Oh, we don't have any good IPs to make video games.
And everyone's like, what about this?
Oh, well, you know, if you want to see all those, maybe you can play this little game called Astrobot.
It's a $60 entry to a free game that came as a demo for the PS5 controller. And they turned that into a full game. It's a good game. I've seen it. People enjoy it. I'm not hating. But it is also a graveyard for all of those IPs that they said that they don't have and they can't make games of. And they go, well, but if you want to see all those, maybe you can go collect them at Astrobot and you can see Parappa the Rappa and Ape Escape in Astrobot, because we're not making any other game of those. This is your only chance to play it. I felt weird about that. I probably, if I played Astrobot, I would enjoy it. I'm not spending $60 on it. This is like a $30 game to me. It is a great game for the PlayStation audience, for the Sony brand. It's a good game. I'm not hating. But it's also a graveyard for 35 other good IPs that they could be making games of. They probably wouldn't sell 1.5 million copies, but it'll give people something to play on the PlayStation, because I'm sorry, they don't have much. I'm not saying there's much on the Xbox either. Like, that's hurting too. Next up, Balatro. The problem with Balatro is that it's a roguelike. People on the masses, for the most part, don't care for roguelikes the same way they do some of these other type of games, right? You can get into an RPG, you can get into a platformer. Roguelikes require a commitment. There's a lot of things to learn, there's a lot of synergies, and it can be frustrating for new players to jump into something and they don't understand how it works, what the synergies are, what are the strategies, all these different things. So roguelikes, I feel like personally have a larger barrier to entry than some other types of games outside of like Souls-likes. But the issue with Balatro, I think, is that people see either, oh, it's a card game, and there's a negative connotation around card games. I specifically do not like card games. Balatro is an exception. It may not seem as exciting to a lot of people. So I will say that's the issue that I would see for if someone gets presented with all these games and you're like, oh, well, this one's a platformer where you're like a robot and you go and find other video games. This one is a mythological journey, the journey to the West, and you can basically start out as a fallen god and regain all your powers and you save the world. Or you can go to a magical land and fight these crazy creatures and have all sorts of weapons. Or you can save the world again with a bunch of crazy weapons and magical creatures. Or you can save the world again with a bunch of crazy weapons and magical creatures. There's kind of a theme here. I feel there's kind of a theme here with a couple of these games, but you can understand them just by saying, okay, you do the thing, you are the guy, you save the world. The problem with Black Myth Wukong is outside of the politics associated with the launch, and I won't go into those. The problem with Black Myth Wukong is that people felt like it was just a copy-paste Souls game. You go there, you fight the thing, big boss, oh, you fight it 10,000 times, you got to figure out the weakness. Yada, 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 blah, 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 blah. I saw a lot of that. It didn't feel as inspired. It came out of nowhere and it's selling all these copies. It seems like an industry plant. Like, all the negative things that came with a game that pops off like this happened with Black Myth Wukong. I played it for about 20 hours, 30 hours, I think. I had a good time, but I ended up falling off of it because I did feel like it was sort of like a carbon copy Souls experience. It's like, okay, you know, copy my homework from Soft, but don't make it look too similar. But it had enough things that were unique about it. It wasn't crush your soul type Souls-like. It was figure out the puzzle type Souls-like. It was more of an action adventure Souls-like. I thought it was a good game, but it also fell off pretty quick in terms of the zeitgeist of, you know, internet culture and popularity on Twitch and stuff like that. It sort of came and went. It sold like crazy, but it sort of came and went. Erdtree. The thing that I don't like about Erdtree is that I feel like this is what happened with Erdtree. They go, okay, we heard you that, you know, Elden Ring didn't seem like as difficult of a game outside of a couple bosses as maybe some of the old Souls game. It wasn't really like grind your bones into dust difficult. I beat Elden Ring. I've never played a Souls game other than Dark Souls 1 on the Xbox 360 for 2 hours, and I got to the bridge boss and I handed my friend the controller and I said, okay, you beat him. I beat Elden Ring twice. It's a good game. I thought it was for a Souls game, it was very accessible. The problem with Elden Ring, specifically with Erdtree, is that it's a DLC. Say what you want about Game of the Year, whether it merits having DLC or it doesn't. Personally, I don't think DLC should be a part of this category because it is not a game. It is not the game. You need to have Elden Ring in order to play it. So you need another game, a core game to play the DLC. It's not standalone. If it was standalone, I would understand this a little bit better. And the argument I have with this is that if this is included this year, Phantom Liberty should have been included in Game of the Year last year because Phantom Liberty is one of the best expansions that I've played for a game in a very long time. Phantom Liberty, I don't say what you want about Cyberpunk. I don't care what you say about Cyberpunk. Oh, it was a bad launch. It didn't run the PS4. Fine. Go back and play it now. It is a completely different experience. And Phantom Liberty is one of the best DLC stories that I've ever experienced. It's so good. So if Erdtree is included here, Phantom Liberty should have been included last year. I don't know when the rule change, or maybe it's always been there, or they're just like, they're clarifying it more this year because Erdtree is a part of this. I don't think DLC should be a part of it. I think if we're getting to the point where we're having big expansions or big updates, this should be in the ongoing games category because we're putting the same stuff in the ongoing games category year over year. Fortnite, Destiny, and I'm not hating on any of these games. It is good community support, but like this feels like ongoing game stuff. This feels like a No Man's Sky expansion coming out. Like this should be included in that if it's not its own category. You can say whatever you want about the merits of it being included in Game of the Year. I disagree, but it's not the end of the world. The world keeps spinning. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth suffers from the issue of, one, there was a lot of discourse about the visual fidelity of it, both when it came out and when the PS5 Pro was announced, because I saw a lot of people going, it was unplayable on the core PS5. I can't wait for the $700 PS5 Pro to be able to play Final Fantasy VII in 60 FPS ultimate fidelity. Like, I played Final Fantasy VII Rebirth on an OLED screen, a big OLED screen downstairs on my TV, and I think it looks great. It is a gorgeous game. I get that like the character model is a little blurry, yada yada yada. The problem with Rebirth is that it suffers from sequel syndrome, and that there was so much hype around remake and people loved remake or they hated it. It was very divisive. It was either the best remake ever or they ruined it. Why did they do this? So when Rebirth came out, there was either I can't wait to play this or I'm not touching it. I didn't like remake. So I feel even though it sold 2 million copies, it's a great game. I enjoy it a lot. I think it's got more going against it than it does for it, but in terms of the games that came out this year, it was the biggest. All right, we're getting into the one that is going to cause me the most backlash, I feel, because I can deal with Souls fans. I know how to deal with them. I just say I'm a Dex build and they go, oh, Dex build. Oh, you're a Dex build? Oh, why don't you do strength? I'm like, oh, okay. You're talking about me being able to cheese the game and you're just pressing one button for 48 hours? Don't get me started. But Metaphor Refantazio, it's an Atlas game. It is a Persona style JRPG. The thing, and I'm speaking from a layman, I'm speaking from someone that has not played this game. If you show me any Atlas JRPG, I would go, is that Persona? And 9 times out of 10, I would be right. And I know it's not a Persona game. I know it's a different world. It's a different thing. Is that the visual art style of it to me just rings Persona. And that's good. Like, it is a good visual art style, but I feel like I can play this game and probably get the same experience that I do out of playing a Persona game. I think it's probably a good game. And from what I saw of it, I would enjoy playing this. I love JRPGs. So that's the negatives I see about all these games, right? That's the stuff that I take out of this that's like, okay, these are the things like sort of working against each of these. So here's the things that are good about all these.
Great work, Hydrobot. Can I? Ow.
Astrobot is a fantastic platformer. Visually, it looks amazing. It is a fun puzzle solving platforming game. It takes good use of the haptics and all these different things that the PS5 controller has. It's cute. It's accessible. Sold 1.5 million copies. That's good. I'm sure that Sony was not expecting this to be as popular as it was. Like, this is a game that you can play with your kid and go, hey, I played Ape Escape when I was a kid. Look, that's the game that I was telling you about. And they go, yeah, whatever, Dad. Sure thing, Grandpa. I'm playing Astrobot now. Shut up. It's a great platformer. Visually, it looks amazing. Astrobot is Sony's strongest competitor in the game of the year, in my opinion. I think Astrobot has a very good chance. I'm going to come back to Balatro. Black Myth Wukong. It is one of the biggest selling games. I think it broke Steam records. I think it's number 2 on Steam. 20 million copies, right? Sold 20 million copies. Peak on Twitch was 480,000. That's half of what like Elden Ring launches was. It was a big game. It is a very big game in China. It is a massive game in China because there is correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think there was something that I looked up that there's not a lot of offerings for these type of games in China. I don't think like the Souls series is there. I'm not entirely sure, but this was a game that was prime for a market that was wanting a game like this because there was a lack of variety in that market. But it was like number 2 or number 3 on the Steam charts out of nowhere. Like just under Power World, and this was a massive game, and it was a fun, accessible Souls game that like the beginning was a little bit of a struggle, like a little bit of grinding, not too much. I got through a ton of bosses in like probably like 5 or 6 tries, and if that was like a Souls style game, I'd be stuck on the same boss for like, I don't know, probably like 2 days, or just like go grind somewhere and get a bunch of levels. But this was like a boss rush Souls game that was more accessible, so I can see why this one popped off. But it also, as fast as it popped off, it kind of fizzled out online relatively quickly too. Now moving on to Erdtree. Erdtree, it's Elden Ring. Elden Ring's a great game. It's a great Souls game. My favorite Souls game of all time. But it's Elden Ring. It's Elden Ring. It's more Elden Ring. It's more Elden Ring. It's different Elden Ring. It's some new Elden Ring. But there was a lot of the same Elden Ring in it. That's pretty much all you got to say. That's the positives of it. That's why people like this, because it's Elden Ring and it's more Elden Ring and people wanted more Elden Ring. Rebirth. It's Final Fantasy. They made it more open world. There's more things going on. You can go to the Gold Saucer. You can hang out with Red. You can ride in the buggy. You can go to Costa del Sol. You can see all the things that when you saw them when you were like 12, 13 years old playing it on the PS1, you're like, wow, this is amazing. I would imagine what this looks like in my mind. And then you go and play it and you see those things in real time and you go, wow, this is exactly how I imagine. It's got a nostalgia factor. It looks great, regardless of what people said about the visual fidelity of it on the PS5 base or whatever. It's fine. I think people focus a little bit too much on graphics, but it's a fantastic game. It's a fun RPG. It has all the nostalgia factors going for it. Yeah, it's got beach episodes, all sorts of stuff. Metaphor. It is an Atlas JRPG. Atlas is very good at making JRPGs or publishing JRPGs. Studio Zero probably, I think, developed it, but Atlas is very good at what they do. Very good at what they do. They make and publish good RPGs. I'm sure this is a fantastic RPG. It's probably got a convoluted story, but the character design is probably amazing. The enemy design is probably amazing. They're good at what they do. So, coming back to Balatro. Balatro is a breakthrough phenomenon, right? All these games, you expect them to succeed. You expect a Shadow of Erdtree DLC to sell 5 million copies. You expect Final Fantasy to sell at least 2 million copies. You expect an Atlas JRPG to sell 1 million copies. Astrobot's kind of an outlier here. Like, it is a sort of peripheral game, I would say, like a tertiary game in terms of like the Sony lineup of like your God of Wars and Last of Us and stuff like that. Balatro coming out of nowhere and selling 2 million copies for a person that is their debut game. It is a poker roguelike, and it scored very well on Metacritic, right? And not only that, when I'm looking online and I'm seeing the discourse around things, I pay attention to stuff. I saw a lot of people talking about Astrobot. I saw a lot of discourse around Black Myth Wukong. I saw everybody talking about Erdtree. I watched a lot of Elden Ring streams as well. Not a lot of people I saw talking about Rebirth. Rebirth came out and they were like, okay, yeah, it's Rebirth. Of course, yeah, okay, it's Rebirth, is a remake. Haven't really seen a lot of conversation about Metaphor. I've seen people go, hey, have you seen the new Atlas JRPG? And yeah, it's really good. But in terms of the conversation, and granted, it's a bias too. when I pay attention to specific games, I'm a Balatro creator, I see more Balatro. But I saw more industry talk about Balatro than I did any of these other games, with the exception of maybe Astrobot. I saw celebrities. Charlie Brooker is, talking about it in interviews. There's all these people in the industry and outside of the industry as well that aren't really in the gamosphere or whatever you want to call it, that were talking about Balatro. They're like, oh yeah, I played this like new indie game called Balatro and I spent 14 hours on it in a day. And that's like casually in conversations and interviews, especially for a roguelike indie. The penetration, the impact that it had on the industry, I heard way more conversation about it than any of these others. And granted, there's a little bit of a bias there because like obviously I'm more in tune with the Balatro side of things. With all this being said, these are all really good games. If you look at the numbers, Balatro did about the same numbers, peak on Twitch, as Astrobot did, better than Metaphor. Black Myth Wukong and Erdtree and Rebirth are massive games. I don't see a lot of people still playing Wukong. I don't see a lot of people still playing Rebirth. A lot of people are still playing Erdtree. Metaphor is still relatively early. And I feel Astrobot sort of came and went. Balatro is still doing really good numbers in terms of Steam users. Like I think it's still averaging like 8,000 to 9,000. They have put out a mobile port. They have put out 3 updates since it came out, a big patch, and then 2 Friends of Balatro content updates. And they're coming out with a new update in 2025. A game like this does not make it to the Game of the Year nominations for no reason. It is not we need to have some indie representation. There were a ton of amazing indies this year. Animal Well, Dungeons and Degenerate Gamblers, Ballionaire had an amazing demo, Rack and Slay, Arco's another amazing game that came out this year, Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, Neva, UFO 50, like there's a ton of good indie games that came out this year. You can make the argument that Animal Well should be up here. You can make the argument that UFO 50 should be up here for how deep UFO 50 was, putting out 50 different types of games and making sure that they all work and having a overarching story. Like, it was a very unique experience. The reason why Balatro is up here is because it was kind of a phenomenon. This doesn't happen often. This is also, I believe, the first single dev to make the Game of the Year award nominations. Celeste was close. I think there was a handful of people that worked on Celeste, at least 2. Inside was also a team. Inside was the same people that made Limbo. This is also a bit of a commentary on the state of the games industry. Every single one of these companies, specifically Sony, and I believe Square Enix as well, suffer from their size. Sony's had to downsize, Microsoft's had to downsize, I believe Square's had to downsize. There's been a lot of layoffs in the industry. There's a lot of these big, massive EAs and Ubisofts and Bandai's and like all these massive companies that expect millions and 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 millions in sales. And when they don't hit their 10 million sale quota and they only sell 9.8, they got to cut the fat, right? They got to trim the fat. They got to tighten the belt loops or whatever they want to call it. And we see a lot of issues with companies just getting rid of human capital for the sake of financial capital. Balatro has come in with a single dev and an amazing publisher with PlayStack and has broken through all that in a year where there was a lot of turmoil in the games industry. The reason why I feel like the industry has put Balatro here is, one, to recognize that you can make something and it can go up against a 20 million copy game. It can go up against the biggest Souls franchise of all time. It can go up against Sony. It can go up against Square Enix and have a legitimate shot. I think it has a legitimate shot because of all those things I mentioned, because it was such a phenomenon and it had wider appeal outside of the industry than I think anybody had anticipated. You also look into the fact that as far as like a community goes, Thunk has brought so many people with him that I don't see these other studios doing. I don't see the same thing, because you can't really do that as a Sony. You can't do that as a Square Enix. You can't do that as a FromSoft. You can do that as a local Thunk. You can say, hey Gothic, hey Murphy, do you want to do something for the launch? We'll put you on the Steam page. Hey Nito, do you want to make some cards? Hey Lumpy Touch, do you want to make a Joker? Let's do some invitationals. Let's get Mouth, let's get Scooty. Let's do all of these small things as a community. Let me be in the Discord talking. I mean, he's not as much now because the Discord is way bigger, but early days in the Discord, he was like we were making the game with him. We were giving him feedback of like how like Joker should be, and he was listening to that feedback and putting that into the game. And this may sound like a lot of glazing to a lot of, oh wow, you're really glazed at local Thug and Balatro and PlayStack. The reason why I'm doing it, my success aside from this, everybody played this. I feel like everybody either like was like, oh great, it's coming to mobile, I'm screwed. I saw like 4 or 5 creators in their videos casually mention that their Steam Deck is a Balatro machine now. And I wasn't looking that stuff out. These are just in random random videos and random streams that I would go into. I didn't see people saying like, oh yeah, the Steam Deck is my Final Fantasy VII Rebirth machine. Oh, well, that's because it's not on PC, Murphy. How could it possibly be? You must have downloaded a pirated copy. I've not seen them saying like the Steam Deck is the Black Myth Wukong machine or the Erdtree machine. I see that with Balatro. Probably a bunch of other, like, what other games came out this year? What other big games came out this year? Yakuza, that didn't make it here. Tekken 8, that didn't make it here. Helldivers 2 came out this year. Helldivers 2 was massive. Sold 12 million copies. Helldivers 2's not on here. Helldivers 2 could easily have been on here. Say what you want about the issues that it had with Sony, but like Helldivers 2 was massive. It was a huge game. That didn't make it on here. There's a reason why Balatro made it on here. What Mario game? We had Mario Party. What other Mario games? We had something else. Some other Mario. We had some Nintendo stuff. There's no Nintendo titles up here. There's usually Nintendo titles up here. Jamboree came out. Mario RPG came out. The remake. I think that was a solid game. It has its merits to possibly being up here. 1.0 this year. Frostpunk 2 is a massive game. Epic Mickey Rebrushed was huge. Silent Hill 2. Silent Hill 2 could have easily gotten here as well. This was like a big year for games. Like I thought 2023 was big. This is a pretty damn big year for video games too. We've been eating. Alan Wake 2 DLC Lake House came out this year. We had Yakuza games, Black Ops 6, Horizon Zero Dawn Remastered, Planet Coaster 2. Well, Planet Coaster is having some issues right now. But there are a lot of really big games. Egg Squeeze. So, with all that being said, I'm gonna rank these now of what I think the voting results is gonna come down to at the end of all this. Number 6 is going to Rebirth. Like I said, it didn't meet sales expectations. It has sequel syndrome. People either liked remake or they hated it, and that in turn is gonna cause some issues for Rebirth. I think Rebirth is gonna be 6. Up next. Don't come for me, our JRPG fans, but I think Metaphor Refantazio would be 5th in the rankings overall. This type of game is a little bit more niche. I consider myself a normie gamer. I played Wukong, I played Erdtree, I played Balatro, I played Rebirth. I did not play Astrobot, I did not play Metaphor, even though I do love Atlas RPGs. And I will probably play this at some point, but there was nothing like this didn't come out and make me go, ooh, I needed to play that. Wukong came out and I'm like, okay, I gotta play this because like everybody's talking about it. I gotta see it looks fun. I'm gonna give it a shot. Erdtree came out. I'm like, everybody's playing Erdtree. I gotta jump into it. Rebirth came out. I was like, I gotta play Rebirth. I love Rebirth. Astrobot, not so much. It's not for me. I don't really care for puzzle platformers, but like, I think it's Rebirth and then I think it's Metaphor because I think Metaphor is a little bit more niche in terms of like broad appeal than the rest of this, even in the industry. I know this isn't like, oh, what's the most popular game? Because if that was the case, then, you know, Wukong would win just on sales. But number four, I think is going to Wukong. There were some, politics around this. There was some skepticism around it coming out of nowhere and being as big as it is. Like I saw that conversation many times. I saw the conversation that it was just a copy paste Elden Ring type thing. But I think it's a fun game. But I don't feel like it's as memorable of an experience to a lot of people as maybe like an Erdtree. Long lasting as like a Square Enix Final Fantasy style game. I think it's a good game. I think it comes up in 4th. Number 3, I think, is Astrobot. I say this knowing I'm probably going to eat crow on this. If I'm looking at it as like I'm a games journalist, I feel like having Astrobot be the game of the year is more likely if it's not Erdtree. I think it's going to be 3rd. Now, this is what I think is going to happen. Like if I'm being the most realistic that I possibly can be. This is what I think is going to happen. I think that if I'm in the voting booth, I think the thing that the industry wants is for Miyazaki to have a do-over moment, because when they won the game of the year award for Elden Ring, you had that weirdo dude come up on stage and be like, "Oh, Bill Clinton," and it kind of ruined that moment. And that became the moment, is that dumbass kid going on stage and making it about himself. So I feel like in that sense, Balatro is going to come up a little bit short, because I feel like there is a sentiment in the industry. There's a reason why people are talking about the DLC being included in Game of the Year. There is a reason why it's here in the first place. And I think it's because they want to have a do-over for the last snafu of Elden Ring winning Game of the Year. So I think this is the realistic lay of the land. I think it's going to be Elden Ring's going to walk home with it. Balatro is going to be a very close second, followed by Astrobot, Wukong, Metaphor, and then Rebirth. Now, what I will say is, if it's me, if I'm like heart of the cards right now, And I'm thinking, okay, the same reason that I said Erdtree is up here as a DLC with all those other reasons. Balatro has a legitimate shot at Game of the Year for similar reasons. One, it's a breakthrough game. Everybody's playing it. Everybody was talking about it. They expect Erdtree to be good. They expect Erdtree to be a Elden Ring experience with new stuff and bigger bosses and different things and new weapons. They expect that. Balatro tells a better story, especially this year. And this is why I think this probably has a little bit more of a shot than I said in that previous segment. This says a single indie dev can create a passion project with the community, work with them, make something special and unique that people can gravitate towards, and it take you to the moon, essentially. This is the best story in terms of what the industry likes to say. They like to say the big corporations are not good. They like to say these big over budget AAA games that don't deliver and have all this DLC are bad. They like to say that stuff, but in reality, they go, we like the AAA games because the money coming into the game industry gives us a platform. It gives us content. It gives us sponsorships. It gives us all these different things. Like these big companies like Sony's and Bandai Namco's and Square Enix and Atlas. They're good for the industry because they are, you know, pillars. They're titans. They can put out things with wider appeal to get more people into games. And the more people that are into games, the more money comes in and the more eyeballs there on it and the more things we can do and the more things we can say and like all these different things, right? The industry likes saying that all those things are bad because optically, yes, sure, that makes sense. Big companies doing bad things is bad. You should say that. You should call it out. You should be aware of it. You should not accept poorly delivered products at a $70 price tag. Pre-order bonus, you get 3 days early for $140 and you get a new cosmetic out of it. You should be calling that stuff out. Balatro being here tells a story that the way things have been going with these big companies and these big games and these big set pieces and your $60 400-hour experiences and high def 4K 120 hertz ultra HD. You don't need that. You don't need that to be successful. You don't need to have an epic story about saving the world, about saving the world, about saving the world, about saving the world, about saving dead IPs to be successful and be in the same conversations with all these massive games. You can make a bunch of little pixel cards with goofy guys on them and have Jim Bussy in your trailers and have Dumbos like this on your Steam page with a wig on and a yellow jacket yelling about numbers on a screen to be successful. And you can find it in the weirdest places. This story to me, if I'm the industry, and this is not because like I specifically want to tell this story as the industry. It's because the story tells itself and more people need to see it. If I'm the industry, I want Balatro to be Game of the Year because the story is so good and the message behind it is good and the game is fantastic and it has wide appeal and it's only getting bigger and it has things in it that all these other games don't. And I'm not saying anything bad about the people that are in these larger companies because they do have heart, they do have passion, they do have ideas and dreams and things like that. But in these larger companies, in these massive companies, I say this as somebody that works in one, your passion takes the back seat to profits every single time. Something that somebody wants to do because they're passionate about it or they have an idea that they want to explore or they are talking to the customers or they're talking to users takes the backseat to management, to directors, to C-suites, to stakeholders, to shareholders. All these different things get in the way. When it's just you and a publisher that works with your vision, you can do really cool things. So if I'm the industry and I'm wanting to show what this year has been about, this story is better than this story, with Sony getting another trophy on their mantle, with FromSoft getting another trophy on their mantle, with Square Enix getting another trophy on their mantle, with Atlas getting one. This is also a good story because this also came out of nowhere. This is also a relatively small development company, I believe, putting out a massively popular game. This is a single person and their publisher and a community. Whether you like the community or not, whether it calls you a bozo that doesn't know how to play the game, or it says great content, Murphy, doesn't matter. This tells a good story. And I think that not only do we need a good story, we need more games like this. We have these. We can go into Steam and find these. Right? We need more games like these. We need more games that are about passion, about community, about making something unique, making something fun, making something that doesn't just, okay, well, we need an action RPG, or we need the next sequel to Final Fantasy, or we need something to put all of our dead IPs in. Like, I am biased. I think Balatro is Game of the Year. Thanks for coming to my Murph talk. Now, do you agree? Do you disagree? Where did I lose anyone? I probably lost a lot of people along the way. I think the industry needs more Balatros. I think the industry needs more animal wells. I think the industry needs more abiotic factors, storytelling. I think it needs more arcos. I think it needs more rack and slays, some dungeons, some billionaires. It needs more of that. I'm not saying we need less of these other big pieces. They can still exist, but we need more. We need more of this. And if Balatro sweeps all 5 nominees, I'll show my hair.